All right, thank you all for your patience. Once again, very good afternoon to everyone. I hope my voice is loud and clear. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for yet another webinar. I'd also like to thank our chief speaker, Mr. Joseph Join, for joining us for yet another webinar. In fact, this is our third webinar with him. I look forward to a wonderful session with all of you. I'm Siddharth and I handle product marketing at Web Solutions. So before we actually get going, I'd like to do a quick introduction about the company that I represent. So we will see that in the upcoming slides. Web Solutions or Web is a 20-year-old company as of today. Web was initially known as Wipro e-Peripherals, which was part of Wipro itself. We were in fact the peripherals division of the company. In 2000, we became an independent entity. So from there on, we've actually moved on. We have evolved into multiple solution offerings itself, which you will see in the upcoming slides. So we've mainly moved into three divisions itself: managed print services, digital transformation solutions, which covers two different offerings, that is web GST and DMS, as you can see, and thirdly, intelligent office automation solutions. Okay, I'm hearing from Mr. Mahesh that my volume is not clear. I hope for the others it's clear. I just wanted to check if it's my end or hope I'm audible, everyone. Okay. All right. Thank you. So we also have another offering, that is retail side. We in fact offer retail billing printers for your Kirana stores and departmental stores. We have close to 2 lakh customers pan India on that end, which I will not be covering here, but just wanted to mention. Let's move on. As you can see, these are the offerings that we have. A few bulletin points on this while I also explain what exactly this is. So firstly, we have managed print services. We are in fact known as India's #1 MPS company on that end. The business here is such that we deal with printing hardware based on customer requirement, and they would be charged per print. We also handle asset management itself, wherein they do not have to specifically have assets such as printer hardware, cartridges, accessories as such. We handle end-to-end for that end. And we also cover the full-end service and support. Secondly, we have the intelligent office automation solutions. We offer the latest range of best-selling office automation solutions. We are in fact the authorized distributor alongside Ricoh Japan to sell Ricoh products in the country. We have a wide range of MFPs, that is multifunction printers, on offer, and we cover the delivery and support part as well. Moving on to serial number 3 and 4, as you can see, that is the digital transformation solution side of what we offer. First off, we have GST. I'm sure all of you would have heard of what exactly GST is. We in fact have a solution, an all-in-one solution itself. We in fact hold the license called GSP, that is GST Suvidha Provider, and we are appointed by the government, that is GSTN itself. Our solution covers end-to-end filing, reconciliation. There are 100 different methods of validation built into the platform. We in fact have dedicated modules for e-way bill automation, e-invoicing. We also undertake ERP integration right from SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics, and other individual GSP APIs as well. We have a standalone solution for a managed GST filing as well. So that is on the GST end. Moving on to DMS, that is document management solutions. This is in fact built on two concepts, that is low-code development platform and workflow automation. We offer tailored custom solutions with the help of the two concepts that I mentioned, low-code and workflow automation. We're able to build business process automation solutions basically out of this. I'll move on to the next slide where you can see a little more on what exactly this is. With the help of this, we are able to achieve certain industry processes for automation, that is employee records management, that is one. We also have automation built for procure to pay for the procurement division, management of change. Now, this is mostly for chemical manufacturing and pharma industries in the country. That aside, we have a cloud repository for document storage itself, hosted on Azure. So this is what we do with our solutions end. A quick view of our customers. All right. So that is a quick introduction about the company itself. Now, I also want to mention that after Mr. Joseph John finishes the session, if we have time, we will be able to include a demo of our solution, a short demo. But since based on time restrictions, we cannot do that on a full-fledged scale, I would like to launch a poll for the audience here. If you would be interested in a free demo of our HR ERM solution, that is Employee Records Management. Please note this is a process automation solution itself. We would be able to conduct a one-on-one free demo based on your time and convenience, where our product manager will be able to take up the demo on a one-to-one basis. So let me leave this on for the next 1 minute. Up next, I'll be introducing our speaker for the day, Mr. Joseph John. Once again, thank you all for joining. I hope my voice is loud and clear. I did see a few of them who mentioned it is not clear. I just want to mention that please check it from your end as well. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Let me end the poll. Thanks for the inputs. All right. Welcoming Mr. Joseph John. He's a management consultant specializing in organization strategy, human resources management, and executive coaching. Mr. Joseph carries wide-ranging experience in the fields of management and consulting for over 3 decades. Since 2011, he provides consulting and advisory services in human resources strategy and organization development to clients in India for the last 10 years. He has also advised some of the global consulting firms as well as other Indian firms on organization strategies and compensation policies. Ranging from 1988 to 2011, Mr. Joseph John held several executive positions in businesses and at the corporate office of Wipro Limited. His last role in Wipro was as the Vice President of Human Resources for India and Middle East IT businesses. Prior to that, he was Vice President HR at Wipro Technologies, where he was responsible for talent engagement and development of over 20,000 employees around the globe. He has also worked with the consumer care business, biomedical business, and at the corporate office as head of corporate HR and compensation and benefits for Wipro Corporation. He also held the position as head of recruitment for India and Asia Pacific businesses of Wipro. He has developed and practiced many innovative and successful talent strategies, policies, processes, compensation, and benefits programs for global and India operations. I'd also like to mention that Mr. Joseph has been a panelist and speaker in various HR forums in India and Singapore, and a guest lecturer in management and engineering institutes as well. He's a blogger and has written occasionally in business magazines and newspapers as well. In 2018, he has published a book of essays in human behavior titled I Wonder Why, Perspectives on Human Behavior. I take absolute pleasure to have you here with us today on yet another webinar, in fact, sir. I'm sure the audience is looking forward to directly hearing from you. Over to you, Mr. Joseph John. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sidhu, for the introduction and kind words. Good evening, all of you. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. I hope you will have some takeaway, and towards the end of this short presentation, if you have some queries or if you have some suggestions, It would be good, so that the rest of the participants also will benefit from your experience. With that, I will start off straight away. These are some of the takeaways potentially, so at the end of this discussion, we will all carry. The topic is very familiar to most of us, particularly all these human resources professionals. So the topic is not new, but we will quickly go over some of these things. So what are the factors causing work stress and burnouts in the white collar employees? How does this trend affect the organization? What are some of the pointers for this mitigation and prevention of such job stress and burnouts? What can HR function do to make a change in this current situation? Towards the end, as I said, so we'll pick up your queries and your solutions. Get move on. Sidhu? Yeah, the topic is about, what I call the soiled white collars. The white collar employees are no more, so-called privileged, comfortable kind of a lot. They have their own share of, stress, health problems, all kinds of issues. Now, why this is happening? So most of the reasons we know, but yet, so we will go through some of these very briefly. Over the past several decades, so the occupational health and safety issues in the factory-based workers or the typical blue-collar workers have been largely eliminated. So there is a regulated work environment, fairly safe work environment for most of these employees, and so there is less tension. However, we see that in the last couple of decades, particularly, the stress level of the white collar employees, the so-called executives or the tech kind of professionals, these have been increasing by leaps and bounds. Now, if we look at the health hazards of these employees, at the face of it, we will see that so many of the office-based employees have, in fact, a lot of comforts. They have an air-conditioned office, they have better salaries and perks, and of course, good titles and social acceptance. All these are there. But yet, the average office worker has many physical discomforts. I'm saying even physical discomforts with all these kind of things. And most other people are constantly under stress. The intangibles are showing in. What we sometimes don't see the pressures at the work, but it will be, appearing in some form or other. It can result in tangible stress, fatigue, lifestyle diseases, and in several cases, as we see the news reports regularly, young executives in their late 30s or early 40s or mid 40s, they go through, even coronary heart diseases, and in certain situations, they lose their life. So it is pretty serious, even though things are often intangible, and some people, most of the people, may not even say. They think that these are part of the job, and so we live with it. Is that a thing? So that's what we will see going forward. Now, if we also look at, the boundaries of work get blurred or stretched. Now in the last 2 years, so many of the tech workers and office-based workers, they were either working from home or working from anywhere, or some people occasionally come to office, all that kind of a thing. So initially, everybody thought that it is a good thing. It is providing a lot of flexibility, at least, so it is helping people not to commute on a daily basis and waste their time um, on the road. All that is good, but at the same time, what we also see is that when people are available anytime, the expectation is also changing that so people are available for work anytime, which is a risky thing. So therefore, the Lakshman Rekha between the office or the professional work and the home has been broken. Recently, even Microsoft has made a short research. So they were studying, in fact, so we must be knowing that Satya Nadella is someone who wants most of the employees to come back to office and work. Now, while that may or may not be the right thing, but so that's a position which he has taken, whereas other companies have taken a hybrid kind of a model. So that is okay. The point I am trying to make is not that. The point I am trying to make is that their research has seen that the remote working, in fact, has broken down the already blurred boundaries between professional and home lives. This is what is happening. I am sure many of you must be seeing this in your own companies. So how this is happening to most of the employees. So when people were going to office most of the days, there is a start time, there is a reasonable end time. Now we see that, so we don't have these kind of boundaries. So start time can be any time, end time can be any time, that kind of a thing. So these are creating issues for a lot of office-going people.
Mr. Joseph, there's a bit of background disturbance at your end in terms of the volume itself. If any window or something is open, it would be nice if that can be closed. If not, we'll manage. That's all right.
The window is open, but there is no big noise outside. I think there was a flight or something.
Yeah. In fact, 3 of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, there is no noise here. Can you all hear me now?
I hope it's audible for the rest now. Should be better now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Yeah, so you can go ahead.
Okay. Now, what I am saying is that this is not a COVID-related issue. The whole thing started much before the COVID started. It's only thing that the COVID has actually accentuated the problem or accelerated the problem. So that's the thing. So we will see that a little later. We can move to the next slide. Now, some of these, so why this is happening? One is, as I was talking earlier, the long working hours is definitely a cause. There is research showing that, there is a poor correlation between long working hours and performance. So there is no great correlation between these two. But at the same time, there is a positive correlation between long working hours and so health related issues. So that is very clear. The other one is not very clear. So someone can be spending 10 hours, 12 hours in the office or in front of the laptop, but yet need not be very productive. So whereas long working hours is definitely affecting the health of a lot of people, that is established kind of thing. The other thing is, so what I call the toxic management practices. Now, this may be a strong word, so many of you would be thinking that, so most of the managers in our company are really good people. In fact, they are all good people, capable people. It's not about their basic goodness or capability issue, but the work practices and the demands of the work and the company are such that these managers unknowingly or subconsciously you know lead the employees to certain management practices which actually affect the health and well-being of employees. Examples are many. If I have to say a couple of examples, so let's say unplanned meetings is a big issue in many companies. Or let's say emails at any time, emails coming over the weekend, or emails coming after 10 p.m., or whatever it is. Or let's say, so if I have to give another example, so in many companies, so particularly in a team, one may not actually expect everyone to work with equal efficiency. So what happens is that, so in most companies, most managers get into this kind of trap. There will be, let's say, 3 or 4 people in a team of, let's say, 10 or 20 or 50, who are really very reliable kind of people. So there will be a lot of work overload given to these few people who are really good. So this is a problem, because so if you are good, you get overloaded and you get so stressful. Now these are issues, so now how to handle these issues, so one needs to study that. There are several ways of handling these things in a much better manner. So I'm just giving some of these things. So these may or may not be, toxic management practices, but these are the management practices which are affecting the, so health and well-being of employees. The next point is about ESG sustainability. ESG is very popular terminology now. Environment, social, and governance sustainability. Most of the companies are now, on to ESG sustainability. So typically, the companies look at, so green buildings or, reuse of resources or like water or whatever it is, all that kind of thing. However, there is no significant action on employees' health and well-being. This is a significant thing, which we see even in the so-called so the model kind of companies, the best of the industry, all that kind of thing. So therefore, this is something which is missing and which is probably very, very essential. We'll see that a little more in the later slides. Now, the last point is about, so over the several decades, of course, the professional employees, they get salaries and perks, and many of them even get stock options, wealth creating, so methods, all these kind of things are there, fancy rewards, all those things are there. But all these are not really replacing the need for the basic health and well-being of the employees. So unfortunately, people have equated success with money. It may be one indicator, but it is not the primary indicator. So therefore, so even companies or managers will think that, so this fellow is rewarded very well. He is being paid very high salaries. So what is the problem? So there is stress and it is all part of life kind of things. But that thinking has to change. We can move to the next slide.
Yeah. So before we move to the next slide, Mr. Joseph, I'd like to launch a couple polls if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So this one's obviously for the mass HR audience that we have here today. I hope you're seeing this on your screen. I would like to know in your company which category of employees is the most job stressed. Because this is something the HR themselves would be able to answer. So I'm sure during COVID, obviously, us working from home, uh, obviously the stress level has gone up exponentially. I mean, it is understandable. But of course, now we are all getting back to our workplaces. Most of them are, obviously, while there is still a small percentage that is still working from home, and there are a few which are doing hybrid working as well. We'd like to know what is the exact job stress levels amongst the designations. Okay. So middle-level managers is what I'm seeing, 43% over there. Mr. Joseph, I hope you're seeing this as well.
Yes, I'm seeing this.
Okay. So let me leave this on for another 15 seconds and then post which we can share it for the audience as well. Yeah, I see Mr. Rohit saying always middle. Okay. All right. So let me end the poll. I'll share the results for the audience. Okay. So as you can see, middle managers, it says 43%. So senior leaders is the least of all. I mean, not by a huge margin, but yes. So if I look at this, it's more or less like split sort of equally. If you look at it. So would you like to comment on this, Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, I think this is a representative kind of survey result. So if you do this survey with, let's say, 10,000 people, I don't think it will be any significantly any different.
Correct.
Because, so I'm going to talk about this middle management piece a little later. So that is the weakest link, and a lot of pressure comes on the middle management, which is actually coming here because they face pressure from below as well as pressure from above. So therefore, it is very obvious. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I'll stop sharing and let me launch one more poll before I hand it over to Sir Joseph again. Okay. So what percentage of employees in your company experience some sort of job stress? If we leave this on for another minute. Okay, 50%. All right. Mr. Joseph, there's also one question from Mr. Champa. I think we can take it towards the end of the session. It's left to you, in fact.
Yeah,
He's
sure.
asked, will flexibility affect our yearly appraisal? I have noted it down. I'll moderate it for you towards the end of the session.
Yeah, we will take it.
Okay. Leaving this poll on for another 20 seconds. All right, let me end the poll and share the results. So up to 50% is what I see here.
You will be surprised to see the next slide. So where I was about to show a study done in 2016. The number will be almost similar. So you see that. Next slide.
All right, okay. I would stop sharing and we'll move to the next slide. Yeah.
Yes, this is what I was referring to about this study. This is a study done by Optum, which is an employee assistance company. Study was done in 2016, and this was a large survey which was done with about 2 lakh employees of large Indian companies. Look at the percentage, 46. So I remember, the numbers coming in our poll was more or less similar to this. So if you look at, this is a study which is done much before the COVID. So even as those days, so people were saying that about 46% of the people suffer from some form of stress at the work. Of course, COVID has made things only worse. That is very obvious. So the simple thing is that, instead of work being part of life, if you look at the quotation which I picked up from a recent McKinsey interview, this lady says that, there is just life, and your work is part of your life. That's it. So that is the way one needs to see life. But what happens is that, so now most of as professionals, we see it exactly the opposite. So for most of us, life is what is left over from our work. Our number one priority is work, and whatever is left over, so we adjust our entire life to the rhythm and rhyme of the professional work. Now, I'm not saying that so one should not so make an adjustment between these two. Obviously, one has to make an adjustment between these two, profession as well as personal lives. But so where is the priority? Do you see your work as part of your life, or do you see life as what is left over after work? So this is the tilt which we need to see, which is difficult, but it is possible. So we can move to the next slide. Now, on the face of it, most of us will be thinking that, the employee stress and burnout and all, it is a matter of the employees to take care of this. And the companies are not affected, so companies, they make their profit, they go on with regular work. Customers are there, all those kind of this. And most of the companies profess that customer first and all those kind of theory. The point is that the research shows that the loss of profitability because of the employee stress is a proven thing. Sometimes it may not appear in the short run. During this particular quarter, it may not appear. But what happens is that over a long period of time, it definitely has an impact. Which will impact the employee engagement. The employee engagement will actually result into so the employee turnover. Employee turnover will result into employee costs, all those kind of things. Unfortunately, so many of the companies, even though, they see high turnover, for example, today, so some of these tech companies or IT companies, the attrition rate is about 25% or more. Now, when you say 25% attrition, annualized attrition means that 1/4 of your organization is going out of the company every year. Imagine, so if this happens in a small community, it's a terrible situation. Imagine, let's say, a country like India, let's say 1/4, 25% of our population is actually vanishing to some other country, whether it is US, Australia, or even Pakistan. Now, so that is a big issue. So whereas companies still think that, so yes, people are going in, we will hire and kind of this thing, hiring big numbers. This year we will hire 40,000, all those kind of things. The fact is that, most companies do not calculate the real cost of employee turnover. There is a direct cost, there is an indirect cost, all these kind of things. So transition costs are there. Healthcare costs are there, insurance costs are there, all these kind of issues are there. So the point I'm saying is that the employee stress and burnout has an impact on organization as well. We'll move to the next slide. So therefore, what can companies do? I'm suggesting just 4 things, so you can think of more, or you can pick up 1 or 2, which is, if it is relevant to your company, you can always do that. So the first thing which most companies or every company can do is do a very thorough professional audit of what is the cost of, so the toxic management, or let's say the kind of wrong management practices which are leading into the health and so well-being of employees. So that has to be done, so probably that has to be done by a professional agency or done by a capable team of people within the organization, so that, so first you have an understanding of what is the cost of all these kind of things. Second is, so as I was saying that, so it will be worthwhile for every company to set up an employee sustainability committee, which should have top level buy-in, so those companies which are listed or public companies, definitely there should be a board member who should be, heading this or leading this initiative. And then, so look at the key challenges to employee well-being. When I say employee well-being, so I'm not saying that, so employees may have problems at home, so we can't, as organization, we may not be able to handle that. I'm referring to all those issues which are at the work in the company, which are affecting the well-being of employees. That has to be studied, and then, so those kind of issues need to be addressed. The next action could be to create, some small pockets of success in terms of, let's say, if some managers or some teams, if they are able to make a more acceptable, more healthy kind of an environment for their employees, showcase that, create what we call the center of excellence, and then promote best practices, so in the organization, because changing an organization in a short span will be difficult. So go by pockets of excellence and then spread it. The last is, to create an employee sustainability metric. So create some kind of a measurable kind of a metric, which will be useful to the senior management. If you don't measure it on a quarterly basis, probably, you may not find a solution to this. Can move on. Okay, this is more important for this group of people, most of people coming from HR backgrounds. Can we make a change? It is a hard task. It is not easy. So, but we can. What we need to do is that we have to influence the influencers. The very top management has to be influenced, and they should be convinced that there is a problem which we need to address. The other thing is that, so let good things start at home. I mean, the HR department. I have seen myself in many companies. Many of the HR professionals themselves are highly stressed out employees. Now, that is a wrong thing to showcase. So you as an employee service provider or an employee advocate, if you are highly stressed, so you may not be able to advocate a stress-free environment to employees. So therefore, first, so you should look at, so how your department is being run. Are the employees in the HR department, their health and well-being is good? Are they stress-free, reasonably stress-free? What I mean. So that is very important. The third point is what, so it came up in the survey, strengthen the hip muscles. That is what I meant is the mid-management. The mid-management are the people who bear the brunt of, all these issues coming from the top, coming from the bottom. So therefore, so there needs to be, an initiative to strengthen the, the middle management. It is not about, so providing some training. Training is only one small part. What is important is, there should be decision-making and accountability pushed down to these people, because if they are able to take decisions on their own, if they're accountable and if they're capable, then, so they will be able to manage better, and then they will be able to manage their own health and well-being. Now, the other thing is, again, very important in terms of norms of work. If you look at, so there are lot of companies have got their own procedures and all these kind of things. But when it comes to real practice, we will see that, so all these things are being broken. There are no clear norms for senior managers as to how they deal with the people below them. There are no clear norms for teams, for meetings, for communication. Now, it may be worthwhile to find some way of controlling some of these things. For example, so if we can set up something like off work hours, this particular window of time, let's say, if you say that if you're a normal working company without night shifts and all, so let's say if you say that, so let's say from 8 p.m. to, let's say 6 p.m. or 7 a.m., there are no office calls. So if you don't pick up an office call or official call during this time, it is fine. Unless, there is an exceptional situation. So something like that. I'm saying some of these kind of things. So there needs to be some norm. The second thing is that, so the companies also end up rewarding unhealthy behavior. For example, the hard work has been something which has been highly celebrated in many companies. But hard work is, very highly misunderstood term. Mostly it is meant by, how long you spent on a particular project, how long you spend your time in the office, or whatever it is. But that sometimes, it is promoting inefficiencies. So in your company, if you have reward programs around these kind of things, relook at this. I'm not saying that hard work is not good. Hard work is required. But at the same time, look at productivity, look at the results. It's not about, so some people working long hours, kind of these things. And if somebody is actually working long hours, so typically we used to call this running the extra mile kind of thing, which may be required at times. But if somebody is running the extra mile week after the week, overworking, then you need to examine, what is wrong there. Clearly, there is something wrong. Then, of course, the last point is, so provide support for the people who are really stressed. Some people may not talk, but, so you need to sense, those people and then provide support, so listen to them, counsel if they require, professional help if required, provide that and help them. So these are some of the things which HR can do to improve the situation of job stress for the employees. Can move on.
All right. So let me launch two more polls before we move to the next slide. All right, audience, I hope you're seeing this on your screen. So we'd like to understand what is the response on this. In the last 3 years, have you or did you have any reported or known cases of health issues and depression related to job stress? No, I'm sure there is a significant number on this considering, especially during the 2020 time. Okay, so it's a 53-47% ratio that I'm seeing here right now. Okay, let me end the poll on this and share it for the audience. Mr. Joseph, any comments on this?
I think this is again expected. So this is not about the number, but so the fact is that so let's say even in this small survey, if we say that 53% of companies had some cases of extreme job stress, that's an indicator that there's an important issue. So that's all I read from this survey.
Right. Okay, I will stop sharing and launch one last poll for the day. What is the level of annualized attrition percentage in your company? Okay, 15 to 20% and less than 15%. I believe during, at least in the last 2 years, we did have a lot of them leaving. And I mean, of course, the recruitment rate was considerably lesser, but I think it's picking up right now. Right, Mr. Joseph? It is picking up.
It is picking up. Of course, so this is also an industry kind of a thing. So depending on the industry demand supply, there can be a churn among employees. So therefore, employee turnover in itself need not be a measure of good management or bad management, because employee turnover largely is a function of the demand and supply. Because if certain talents in the market, if it is short supplied, then of course so there will be a scramble, and that will happen. That's what is happening in some of these tech companies right now. So, but so I am referring in general in terms of any company, high turnover is a big issue. Some of the effects we may not see immediately, but it is an issue.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. I will end the poll and we will move to one last slide. Yeah.
Yes, this is the last slide. I thought, this is a very profound statement by none other than Peter Drucker. Many of you, I hope, would know who Peter Drucker was. He was probably the most influential management thinker in the 20th century. Very, very profound thinker. Now, what he says is that most of what we call management consists of making it difficult for people to get their jobs done. Now, it's a very profound thought. In the first sight, we might think that, no, this is an extreme statement. But if you all really look into our own companies and how the management is working, in most companies, management is actually making things more complicated. Now, we can say that technology has, made things a little easier. Yes, of course, it has. But still, so a lot of the management practices are actually making things difficult for employees. And how we can make things easier for employees is the task of management. Thank you very much. Now I will pick up any questions or views of the audience. I'll be glad to pick up some questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Joseph, thank you so much for yet another insightful and very informative presentation. We have one question from Mr. Champa, but I am looking forward to more questions. Dear audience, please put down your questions. Any questions related to the topic or anything generic HR also we would appreciate. So the platform is open to you now for any kind of questions. You can use the Q&A or the chat. And I'd also like to mention, if anyone wants to interact with Mr. Joseph directly over voice, that can also be done. So you just have to give me a yes or a no on chat, or just type on the chat. That should be more than enough. So I think we can start off with Mr. Champa's question itself. So he had earlier asked, let me just pull up that question. He's asked, will flexibility affect our yearly appraisal?
Uh, it can, but it need not be. Typically, what happens is that so managers have got a tendency of forgetting people who are not seen on a daily basis. Let's say if you are an employee, so you are working from home or remotely, you don't come to the office. Chances are that so some of the managers might overlook you when it comes to some of the decisions. But then that is the traditional kind of thing. But today, so most of the professional managers, they measure your performance through other means. There are ways of measuring your output, your work. So therefore, it is a question of so how professional your management or the managers are. Otherwise, there is no harm providing flexibility to employees. But flexibility, when you give flexibility, as I was saying, you also have to set certain boundaries. It cannot be free for all for everything. It cannot be. There are you can provide some flexibility within certain limits, so that the overall productivity of the organization is not lost. So that is the response I could give.
All right. Mr. Champa, I hope that answers your question. If you would like to ask anything further, please put it on the chat. I will go to the next question from Mr. Prem Kumar. Mr. Joseph, I think you're also seeing this on the chat, right? Yeah. So he's asked how to communicate to the management who are narrow-minded on any occasion towards employees. A few inputs on that.
So these could be specific issues of some managers, kind of this thing, and maybe some companies have got that issue. So now there are ways. For example, so if you have, let's say, the very senior leader in your company, if she is very rigid or he just rejects certain things or considers that these things are irrelevant because I'm making profit. So then the way to handle that is that then you need to find few other influencers who can actually influence that leader. And if you can try that, if that is also not working, then you are in the wrong place. That's what I can say.
Okay. Mr. Prem, hope that answers your question. I'll move to the next question from Ms. Padmaja. What are the best practices to control attrition?
Well, there are so many, so now I will just say 2 or 3 critical things. Number one is that, the providing a meaningful work is the most important thing. Second, so an employee getting reasonable and professional guidance is important. Third is providing a good process environment. Then comes, the rest of the things like, the typical employee engagement activities. How engaged is that employee with the team, with the managers, that kind of thing. Then communication and all these kind of things. Basically, so if an employee finds that I have a meaningful work, my contribution is valued, and there is a healthy environment to work, most people will tend to continue with the company. So that is it. So how do you make your company more attractive than your competition? That is the ultimate question. Now you could do 10 other things, but I'm saying that this is the crux of the matter. It is a matter of marketplace. So like so you are buying from one portal to another portal. How do you buy something either from Amazon or from Flipkart? The stuff is available on both platforms, but you have to choose. So it is like that. So make your company more attractive to your own employees.
Right. Next question, in fact, this is not a question. I think Mr. Nilesh had inputs based on the presentation itself. He's mentioned the presentation was quite apt, but why companies are not paying attention to the issues. He's also mentioned line managers are not sensitive to the burnout issues of their team members. So if you'd like to comment on this, add on a few points to this, you can do that, Mr. Joseph.
It is a continuation of the industrial mindset. What happened is that in the industrial era, the human beings were just assisting the machines in making things, producing things. Whereas, so when we transitioned into a technology era or into a service era or a knowledge environment, that has changed. The significance of the human intervention is very, very high. Whether it is creating a product, creating a process, or creating a code, that is very important. The machine is just incidental. So whereas earlier the machine was more important, the human beings or the laborers or employees were incidental. If you look at a typical process company or a factory, there used to be continuous process industries. The labor cost of the overall cost used to be just 3%. You take a steel mill or those kind of things. Whereas if you look at a service or a tech kind of a organization, that is exactly the opposite. Of the total cost, so maybe the employee cost will be up to 50, 60, or even 70%. So that is so this switch is actually demanding a switch in the approach to human beings. That switch has not happened as the technology and service progression has been happening. So that is one reason. Having said that, there is realization, at least in some places. There are many companies which are actually trying to do some positive interventions in this area, but lot more need to be done. So that is what is going on in the industry.
All right. Let's move to the next question from Mr. Amit. He's from second year BBA HR and he's looking to become a HR. What are the aspects of HR functions that you would tell younger self to master? Any inputs on that, sir?
There are so many inputs, but I would suggest that that is not immediately relevant to today's topic. Maybe you can catch up with me separately, privately. Maybe I can give you some.
Okay, so yeah, on that note, I'd like to mention if anyone wants to reach out to Mr. Joseph directly, I will share the mail ID itself. In fact, you will receive a post-webinar mail. So please respond on that. That should be enough. I'll be able to connect you with Mr. Joseph. You can directly interact with him on mail. That should be done. All right. Next question from Mr. Japji. I'll also handle the Q&A. There are 3 inputs over there. Mr. Japji, in today's scenario, HR analytics is given a lot of importance. How do you interpret that, and is a HR manager required to do so?
Yeah, this is a very relevant question. So now, even though I come from a slightly older background in terms of my professional experience, today it is very, very relevant. For example, let's say the artificial intelligence or data analytics can play a big role in terms of analyzing the employee behavior or trends or changes in the trends of employee behavior and then readjusting the management practices based on that. So therefore the management can become a lot more data-based. So in the past, what had happened is that we didn't have enough of measurement tools to measure the mood of the employees or the needs of the employees. We will do once in a while maybe a survey or something, but even then we may not get the right kind of a thing. Whereas today there are tools available through which you may be able to analyze the communication or analyze the data around employees analyze the behavior patterns of employees, and then so come to meaningful conclusions. So therefore, it is relevant. But so getting the right kind of tools and deploying it is very important. It is not very easy.
All right. I see a bunch of text that is on chat. I will come back to that. Let me quickly address the Q&A as well, because these had come a little earlier. From Ms. Swati, I work as a HR in a startup. Definitely it demands a lot of slogging. How to handle such cases?
Of course, startup is a different environment. So if you have consciously joined a startup, be prepared to be part of that culture, because so startup is a culture where so a lot of things happen very quickly. A lot of things are not really organized. So I think so you have to stay with them, go with the process, and then slowly change. For example, so it is not easy to change the behavior of the startup organization, particularly when they are small. But what you can do is, so you hire the right kind of people, you influence the right kind of behavior over a period of time. So maybe you stay with them, let's say 2 years, 3 years, and then change things, because startup environment is completely different. It demands a different set of behaviors. So obviously, so there is no short answer as to how you can change things instantly. There is no way, but you can do it over a period of time. That is the skill.
Right. Hope that answers your query, Ms. Swati. All right, I'll go to the next one from Mr. Gilbert. He's a retired person after 41 years of service in the HR field. Uh, I can see the younger gen are able to overcome work stress because they have learned to relieve stress through other forms of yoga, meditation, taking a holiday break. This is something which was not marketed back in those days, back in 1980s. What is your view on this? He's asked.
I think clearly there is a point there. There are a lot of people, for example, so even in the survey which we have seen, let's say about approximately 50% of people are stressed. That means the other 50% of the people are actually managing the stress well. So that is a fact. So I take that fact. But I was worried about this 50% of people who are overstressed or impacted. So that is a kind of course, 50% of the people are able to manage. Similarly, the other point is that when you are young, so in your early 20s or mid 20s, things won't show up. So you can stretch, you can work 14 hours, all that kind of thing. But what happens that cumulatively, when you become 35, it started showing up. You have your back problem, you have your health problem, you have your personal relationship issues. All these things will start showing up when you reach your 30s. And when you reach your 40s, you are probably irreversibly unwell. You may be running the show, but at the same time, internally, you may have issues. So therefore, so if you can manage well, it is fine. If you can't manage, then you need to change. So this is all what I'm saying. What you say is right. There are a lot of people who are able to manage.
Absolutely. Hope that adds on to your point, Mr. Gilbert. I will move to the next one from Mr. Nilesh. Again, this is on the Q&A tab itself. Do you believe old employees are the asset for the organization? As per my experience, mainly old employees influences to management a lot and restrict the growth of overall company, as they are very much comfortable in their old working styles and resist the changes. Would you like to add something to this, Mr. Joseph?
No, it is not about being old or young. It is about, so what is the job you are doing? What is the output you are bringing? So that is what is important. So the most important job in this country or jobs in this country are handled by really very old people. Most of them are above 70. I'm talking about politics and governance. So therefore, so it is not that, so age is a problem or whatever it is. At the same time, you see, so very capable young people, they are bringing, new competence to the work, and then they are also producing. So it all depending on what is your requirement on the particular job and what is the best fit for that. That is, then, so if it is an advisory kind of a role, of course, so somebody with a longer experience in the industry or a particular segment may be able to provide a lot better advice. So that's how I see it. So I don't see an age divide, so whether older people are better than younger people or other, it is not like that. There are great people who are very young. There are great people who are very old.
Okay. There is one anonymous attendee who's actually uh, put a query here. How can we become HR? And as a HR, we're facing lots of issues. How to deal with all of the same, because sometimes all are frustrated. A little generic. I mean, you can take it up if you'd like. Otherwise, it's fine.
Yeah, I think this is a topic in itself. Probably we will park it for now because so if I take it, it will take a lot of time.
That's right.
We already overstretched our budgeted time. So therefore,
Right.
if somebody who is really interested can reach out to me.
Absolutely. That can be done. Yeah. So, of course, we've already extended by another 10 minutes. So, what I'm going to do is let us try and answer for another 4-5 minutes if that's okay with you, Mr. Joseph. We're not going to take up anything new.
Yes.
There are some queries on chat actually. So, I will start off, Mr. Rajashekhar. What kind of best employee engagement practices for blue collar employees in manufacturing industries?
Yeah. First of all, that was not part of this today's discussion.
Right.
So therefore, probably I can take it offline because today the entire theme was about so the stress and burnout issues of white collar workers. So we can take it up separately. So there's no problem.
Right. Sure. That can be done. Mr. Matthews has also put down his input over here to show the incapability of managers. So I'm not going to read this out. I'm sure the others have already read it out. So let us go to the next one. There's one from Mr. Mahesh. I'm a middle manager in spite of giving my best, being proactive, increasing profitability by reducing costs and bringing in savings, resolving conflicts between staff. The salary increase is around 3%, whereas for other workers, it is more than 20 to 45. Hard work, sincerity, good results, accuracy, and timely completion of my work has not been acknowledged, let alone appreciating. So he's basically mentioned that this is actually quite stressful on the whole.
Sorry, I missed that. So what is stressful?
On the whole, he's mentioned that because of the hard work that he's done, he's only receiving about 3% of a salary hike, that is, in comparison to the others who are close to 20 to 45.
That's a specific issue. I think we can't take up that here. That's specific to your company and your performance management or your management. We'll leave that. There could be many reasons without knowing that context. So it's not fair on my part.
All right, sir. Yeah. So one question from Mr. Mahesh. Let me just read this out. In today's scenario, if you see, most of the line managers are having bossing character rather than a good leadership qualities, which is missing, needs to be addressed. Okay, this is not a question. I think he just mentioned his feedback, his input over here, what he feels, that is.
Okay, so I have nothing more to add on that.
Right. Another one from Mr. Mahesh. What are the best practices to keep your employee engaging activities to boost their work-life balance?
There are a lot of things I mentioned during the presentation, so I wouldn't like to repeat the whole thing. So essentially, it is about the employee engagement is about, making the work meaningful. making the work comfortable and rewarding the employees, adequately. So plus, of course, the relationship issues, giving a cultural ambience of those kind of things. It's a combination of a whole lot of things. Now, specifically on employee engagement, there are multiple other things which we can discuss maybe offline.
All right. We will take up this one last question from Mr. Murali Marath. He's mentioned, hello, JJ, always a pleasure listening to you. Over the years, organizations have always regarded doing more with less as a rewarded trait. Continuous improvement, automation, etc., sometimes have been unidimensional, further pushing productivity metrics soar now. I feel organizational intent on this topic is key. Do you think duty of care as an employer is slowly disappearing? Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with Murli. So I know Murli and even Matthews. I haven't read his comments. These are thorough professionals, so that's all correct. What its observation is correct. So therefore, the challenge for HR is in terms of how do we bring back that to the agenda of the senior management. So that is the challenge for HR. Now, on their own, for example, if I am running a company, I am making profits, and my investors are happy, my stock prices are going up. How do I care about, so who is stressed or who is not stressed? So typically I would say that if somebody is stressed, you hire somebody else. So that is the attitude, so typical traditional managers will take. But, so whether that is sustainable, whether that will create an employer brand for the company, these are the issues which HR has to take up with the top management. The visionary managers or the owners will actually take up these kind of things. And my own experience is that many of even the so-called family-run companies, they all have become professional and they started listening to the HR and started changing these things. So there is a task on the HR, but we need to take it up.
All right. That actually brings us to the end of the questions and the chat itself. So I'd like to mention that if there are any further questions, of course, I will send out a post-webinar reach out mailer. Please reply back to me on that with a yes or a no, or if anything else that you would like to interact with Mr. Joseph, I'll be more than happy to connect to him. That can be done. So on that note, I would like to end the session for today. Special thanks to Mr. Joseph John for yet another successful webinar. It has been a thorough pleasure with you, sir. I'm sure the audience definitely have got a lot of insight into the topic, and you also happen to answer a lot of queries as well. So thanks a lot for that, Mr. Joseph. I look forward to seeing you on yet another webinar in the coming months for sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Sidhu, for so navigating the whole thing, and all the best to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Pleasure is mine. So on that note, let me end the session for today. And those of you who have actually shown interest for the demo of our solution, our team will reach out to you in the coming 2 to 3 business days. And you will also expect a post-webinar reach out mailer from me. On that note, thank you all and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.